No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
And here we are. Another day, another dollar. This is Mike Loge, the business advisor, and I'm glad that you have joined me this morning. So we're going to get off to the start by saying, hey, you know what? I went out, I bought some bulbs, some flower bulbs. I'm getting ready for spring. Today we're going to get up into 65-degree weather. I'm happy about that. Instead of, we've been down into the 20s and 30s. But we're back. We're back to, I think we're not going to have any more cold weather for a while here in South Carolina. Listen, I talked to you yesterday about a little bit about the president's speech. And remember, the president, I've seen clippets of it, is that he got up and he said that the Republicans were going to dismantle Social Security and Medicare. I want to remind you that when he was a senator, he got up onto the Senate floor and he argued to make changes to Medicare. I'm going to play this, okay? Listen to this.
We have before us the balanced budget amendment, about which many of us have expressed serious reservations, the effects of which are, in both the short and the long term, cannot be predicted with any degree of certainty. We'll hear a good deal of hyperbole on this amendment, promises by those that this is going to cure all, and promises by those, if it passes, that we're going to go to hell in a handbasket and rapidly, and all our liberties will be taken from us. I hope we kind of keep our eye on the ball here and at least have an open mind to the prospect that we can make this amendment better and still have an amendment. I'm sure someone has looked out over the next 15 years and concluded if we stay on the track, even the one predicted by the President of the United States, that we will be providing for an increasingly larger share of every tax dollar just to go to reduce interest on the debt. And to me, that's the driving force behind this amendment. When I introduced the budget freeze years ago, the liberals in my party said, it's an awful thing you're doing, Joe. You are all the programs we care about. You're freezing them. Money for the blind, the disabled, education, and so on. And my argument then is the one I make now, which is the strongest, most compelling reason to be for this amendment or an amendment. And that is that if we don't do that, all the things I care most about are going to be gone. I mean, whatever happened to that old conservative discipline about paying for what you spend? I'm up for re-election this year, and I'm going to remind everybody what I did at home, which is going to cost me politically. When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government. And I not only tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it a third time, and I tried it a fourth time. Somebody has to tell me in here how we're going to do this hard work without dealing with any of those sacred cows.
So there is a president, when he was a senator, making the argument that when he was trying to balance his budget, when he was trying to get a budget passed, that perhaps you were going to have to take some liberties with Social Security and Medicare. He made those arguments. He made them forcefully. So then he stood before the Congress this week and said that the Republicans were doing it and how evil they were. Now, you can't have it both ways. But since the president is a politician, he thinks he should have it both ways. He can't argue for it and then argue against it. So where does he really stand? Except what's best for him politically. What he can drive, what message he can drive to scare you and I about Social Security and Medicare. That's all that it is. It's just a political argument that he's trying to make so that he can scare you against other members of Congress. Now, Congress has come out and they said, no, we're not going to touch Social Security or Medicare. But they need to. Because if you look at the funding requirements of Medicare, they don't have any more funding that will last more than 15 years. So they need to do something quickly. How are they going to fund it? They can't tax anymore because if they're at the top of taxation, they probably will. They will probably try and get more out of us, squeeze it out of us. But that is a problem that we have in politics today, is that we do not have a clear plan. We do not have leaders that will sit down and negotiate. And we do not have any leadership that says what is right and wrong and what we need to do for the American people. Not what they can do for themselves politically, but what is right for the American people. And that is one concern that I have every single day, is that there is no leadership that is sending out a specific message of what needs to be done to help Americans. They're talking about Ukraine, they're talking about China, they're talking about Russia, they're talking about every single thing that's out there. But they're not talking about what is good for the American people. And when we have no leadership in that, then we really are back to square one again of why we formed this nation, because we had taxation without representation. And we're right back there again, where we have people that are saying they're representing us, but are not even close to representing us. Instead of pushing a political agenda just as the president is. So we have to hold these people accountable. Now, the other issue I wanted to talk about this morning is Biden and the Internal Revenue Service have decided that waiters need to report more of their tip income. So they're coming up with these guidelines on how to report tip income, how to get more money out of those tips. Now, if you know most waitresses and waiters, their income is very, very low as it is. They're getting paid minimum wage. Now, with the systems of recording transactions, which is called point of sale in restaurants, when you put a tip on your credit card, it gets reported, and it gets reported on that W-2 of that waiter. So we already have a good reporting system if companies are using points of sale, and most of them are now. But this is very minor money. Very minor money. And yet we have this government who is so thirsty for more taxation that they want to come after the laws. Remember President Biden, he said, no one $400,000 and below will get any more taxes. But here he is. Here the president is. He's sitting down with the Internal Revenue Service and saying, okay, we need to get more money out of those tips. Maybe he's mad because he had to pay a tip. I don't know. But this is not the way that you generate more income. It's how you generate more distrust in the United States government. That's what happens. When you go after the small guy, that's the big problem. Are we missing a lot of taxation revenue? Maybe. But I don't think anybody's done a study on it. I think they say, okay, listen, I had to pay a tip the other day. Gosh, I think that should be taxed. So let's tax him. Come on, let's tax him. We have a government that's out of control on tax and spend. And it seems like the more and more I hear stuff coming out of Washington, D.C., the more and more I distrust them. The more and more that I have questions about our government in their spending practices. If you look at the loans that have been given out, this free money that has been given out, you will find that unemployment, there was a report this morning that billions and billions of fraud was taken out of the unemployment dollars. Now I think about it, I think, gosh, I'm self-employed. I never got to get one single dollar out of unemployment when we were going through this pandemic and when I needed cash. I had to take it from my savings, which brought me down to almost zero because for almost 2 years I had to live off of savings. So when you see fraud in unemployment, fraud in Medicare, fraud in PPP loans, fraud in all this other free money that's given out there, every time the government gives out free money, it invites fraud to happen because they put no controls in place to monitor. They put no rules in place to monitor with. And that's where we get into trouble because they think, okay, let's just give out all this free money. But then they never think about the consequences of people see free government money as a loophole to fraud. And it's a fast loophole. So every time I see this about the government not wanting to sit down and negotiate over Medicare and Social Security and funding Social Security and all these other programs out there that we are literally getting eaten alive by billions and billions and billions of fraud, we have a problem. If they don't address the fraud issue, they're not going to cut spending. If they don't address the fraud within our government and our government programs, we are never going to cut spending because it's just going to go on and on. So listen, if you're a member of Congress and listening to me, you better sit down and you had better say, okay, we need to address the fraud of what is going out of these government programs that should not be going out because we've got too much of it. Billions and billions and billions of money being spent on fraudulent activities in Medicare, PPP loans, unemployment, and we can go on and list all the government programs we have out there that people are taking from. That are taking from. If we don't address the issue, the problem never goes away. Now, the other side of that, it costs a lot of money to go after this fraud. So we have to do a cost comparison of what is it going to cost to go after this fraud. That's what businesses would do. What is it going to cost to defend this, or do we just settle it? That's the issue that we have to go on in lawsuits, right? How much is it going to cost us to defend this lawsuit when we can settle it for much less? And maybe that's what the government's thinking is that, gosh, if we go after all this fraud, maybe it's going to cost us more than the fraud. I don't know if that's the question, but that's the question that we need to look at. So we need to put measures up front so that there is no fraud. There's no way that fraud can break through. Gosh, if you go to the Department of Justice website and you read all of the cases there's so much in fraud. And the problem is that government doesn't address the fraud and how to correct fraud and how to stop it. Every single bill that's written to give out free money, there needs to be measures in there that says, okay, this is what happens if we find that you're in fraud. Put a little scare tactics in there. I don't care. But billions and billions are wasted every single year in fraud of these government programs. Listen, if you want to have more access to me, go to my website at www.lodge.co.com. If you have a business question, send it to me. Send it to me at thebusinessadvisor@gmail.com. Listen, everybody go out and have a great day. If you ever have the opportunity to ask a politician a question, ask him or her, why are they not looking at fraud and all these free programs being going out? Why isn't the language stronger? This is Mike Lodge, the Business Advisor. Talk with you soon. Bye-bye.